First they came for Confederate generals. Now no statue is safe, even a statue dedicated to an American president who fought the Confederacy in the Civil War. A California town is now planning to demolish a statue of President McKinley. That story next. Well, whatever else you want to say about the left, they're not like the right. They don't sit around and talk about stuff forever. They just do it, right or wrong, usually wrong, but they move quick. Last year, the left targeted the nation's remaining Confederate statues for demolition. There was no vote on this anywhere ever. Sometimes they destroyed the statues with mob violence. They got away with it, of course. Now they picked a new target, any statue that offends anybody in power. In Arcata, California, in the northern part of the state, a statue of President William McKinley is going to be torn down on the grounds that he pursued policies harmful to Native Americans. Of course he did. So did Abraham Lincoln. So, of course, we await Lincoln's monument's dynamiting. Not really, but you never know. Paul Patino is on the Arcata City Council. He voted for the removal of McKinley's statue and joins us tonight. Paul, thanks for coming on.
Yeah, you're welcome.
So, you know, I'm not for tearing statues down without a vote, but of all the people whose statue you could tear down, why McKinley?
It's the only one we got.
Okay, good answer. But, I mean, here you have a guy who joined the Union Army at 18 to fight the Confederacy, spent, you know, years in battle. I don't think he has a reputation as a particularly cruel guy. He himself was a victim of gun violence, as you know. Why are you picking on him?
Well, I think if you look at all the stuff about him, see, you just mentioned a couple of things, but there's tons of other stuff about this guy. And when you take the totality of everything he was responsible for and what happened during his presidency, you look at it and you go, okay, positive, negative. If today I was offered that statue as a city councilman, I'd say no thank you. So basically I'm correcting a 112-year-old error of judgment.
Well, I don't know if that's your place. I mean, you didn't put the statue there. Are you having a town-wide vote on this?
Here's what's happening. The city council 112 years or so ago decided to put it there, and the city council has the power to remove it. If indeed the citizens don't want that to happen, we have referendum and initiative here in California that happens constantly. And so it can be simply 1,000 signatures and be on the ballot.
Well, why don't you just let them vote anyway? I mean, you don't have to wait for them to do that. But hold on. I just wonder how you would feel. Let's say there's a Paul Patino statue. I hope, obviously, there never is. But let's say there was. How would you like to be assessed on every bad thing you did? I'm sure you've done good things. I'm positive you've done some pretty bad things. I can just tell. How would you like it if people said, we got to tear this statue down? He was flawed. I mean, shouldn't we be a little more forgiving than that of people?
Let me say this. I don't think any human being deserves a statue. We're all equals. I think it's a mistake to put statues up for humans. You know, Statue of Liberty, it works because that's not a human. Okay? It's a replica or a stylized person. When you put up a human, you're always going to have a problem. No matter what human, whether it's Mussolini or whoever, it's a problem.
I have to say, I wasn't expecting you to say that. You're kind of winning me over a little bit with that argument because I think that's actually true. And we shouldn't be worshiping politicians. Even the good ones are not that good. So I kind of agree. And I'm sure we don't agree on anything other than that. But I don't think that's a dumb point at all. Kind of an Islamic point, but still a pretty good point. But since his statue's up there, and no one living made the decision to put it there, you have to make an affirmative decision to take it down. And by doing that, aren't you really saying, you know, his sins outweigh the good things that he did? I mean, he was a good president. He fought against slavery. I mean, can we ask any more? And by the way, as I said, he was a victim of gun violence. Shouldn't that give him a pass?
You know, I totally see the good points and I see the bad points. And I, as a elected official, a representative of the people in the town, I have to say, go deep inside and look at what would I do if I was faced with this any other time. And 13 years ago, it came before us before. And we didn't have a majority, so it stayed. This time, 13 years later, it came up again, and we had a majority, and so our majority voted for it to leave.
Have you guys solved all the problems in your town other than this? Is it like literally a utopia?
Hey, look, nobody solves all the problems.
No, but I mean, you have like no crimes, and nobody has ever double parked, and no one's ever gotten divorced, and like, do you know what I mean? Nobody chews microwave burritos over Brussels sprouts. Like, you've got it all figured out. So like in your spare time, you're going to tear down a McKinley statue. Is that pretty much what's going on?
No, that's an opinion. Let me put it this way. As a city councilman, I have to cover everything. This is just one item. I don't like wasting a lot of time on it. It's come to us before. It came before I even lived here, this issue. And it's like, okay, let's stop wasting time on it. I'm willing to take the freight. I'll make the decision to make that motion to move that thing so that we can be done with it and move on and not waste any more time.
All right.
So yeah, I really don't like wasting time about it.
Okay. Well, I disagree with you, but I do think you make a good point about not worshiping people. I'm with you on that. Councilman, thank you.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me.
Jason Nichols is a professor at the University of Maryland, and he joins us tonight. Professor, thanks a lot for coming on.
Thank you.
So if
Thank you for having
McKinley
me.
can't make the cut, I mean, unless you agree with the professor I just talked to, who I actually do think makes a really good point. We shouldn't be aiming things after people, especially living politicians, whether it's Kennedy, killed a woman, or Robert Byrd, the Klan recruiter, or any of these politicians should not be allowed to name things after themselves. I strongly agree with that. But like McKinley, really? Why is he so sinful?
Well, I think, if we look at his history, he did some things in terms of what he did with the indigenous people, taking their land, giving it to white settlers, breaking up their autonomy. So I think he has some issues in his past. But at the same time, I think it's important for us, and it's interesting, this discussion, because I think I'm going to play the Republican here and say that you had a city council, a local group, who has made a decision for their community. That's what they're elected to do. And yet you and I here in our shirts and ties here in Washington are going to sit here and tell them that what they did was wrong and second question.
I feel fully empowered to pass judgment on the decisions that governments make.
Okay, but a local government that you have no... I mean, I'm
allowed to have a view on that, and I do.
Absolutely.
And just because the government is small doesn't mean it doesn't make terrible decisions. I'm not that kind of conservative who thinks that, small government, I mean, there's a lot of tyranny that takes place on city councils. I've certainly seen it, having lived in a small town. But here, I guess, is the point I'm making. We're retroactively judging people selectively. So you wouldn't have any problem with a monument to the Cherokees and the Trail of Tears, I would assume, because they're an oppressed people. But, of course, they brought their slaves with them. They're African-American slaves. I'm not attacking the Cherokees. I'm merely pointing out that, history's a lot more complicated than we pretend it is. And you know that, of course, as a professor. So why are we now pretending that everything is in stark black and white and there are good people and there are bad people and nobody in between? That's a lie.
I think, the primary thing when we're talking about presidents and what they've done is that we need to have a dialogue about the totality of what they've done. I'm just saying in this particular case, and the most important point to me is that activists say that they are going to raise the $65,000 that it takes to remove the statue. So it's not even going to be a burden upon the taxpayers.
No, but
it's going to be housed somewhere. They have a veterans place.
It's just your classic kind of Red Guard nonsense where we destroy the past, thinking that that's going to create a new future. It's just stupid. I mean,
Tucker, that's not a destruction of the past.
Well, of course it is.
The past still exists. And they said they're going to move it indoors, just like I said with Confederate statues.
Nobody is actually offended by this.
That's not true.
Offended by William McKinley?
There's a Native American community 20 miles south of Arcata who said that they don't like seeing this statue.
Okay, we're going to talk to one of them tomorrow. And look, I try to respect people's opinions.
Sure.
But taking down the statue will not improve the life of a single person in that community, as you know. But let me ask you this. As long as we're using these criteria, why do we have an FDR memorial here in Washington after he literally put in internment camps people on the basis of their skin color? Why do we have that?
I think
in living memory, by the way. I mean, some of the people who were in those camps are still alive. This wasn't 300 years ago. It was like 80 years ago.
Yeah, no, I think you're trying to make an argument that I'm not making, or you're trying to sit here and debate with me on something on a point that I'm not making. What I'm saying here is, just like people may be offended by certain things in certain communities. I don't think we should necessarily force it upon that community to have that statue if they want to remove it. This isn't the
well, but
Lincoln,
I'm not forcing it on Arcata, and I also think that the marijuana use level is so high in that town that I'm not sure that they'll ever kind of like get it together enough to take the statue down. I'm betting on that. But I do think there's a principle here that's worth talking about, and that is, how do we assess figures out of our past? Do we impose the values of the present moment, the transitory values that we have this right moment, on people retroactively, or do we take a broader view and say a lot of people who are heroic? Cesar Chavez, for example, flawed guy, beat up illegal aliens. I don't know. I think he was a net positive to the state of California and his labor organizing. Do you see what I'm saying?
What I'm saying.
We want to distort history for political reasons.
Well, here's what I believe. Why can't we take this McKinley statue and put it somewhere where we can have a dialogue about what he represented in, both the good and the bad?
Because
and that
nobody
would be,
knows anything about McKinley, as you know.
But that would be in a museum. That's where they can learn.
Because nobody actually cares about learning about history, and I bet you $1,000.
And that's a problem, and I don't think
it's a huge problem. I bet you can't find 15 people in America who can tell me 10 things William McKinley did. I honestly think that's true.
I believe
including
that
the people who are
I think the people in Arcata can tell you 10 things that he.
I don't believe that for a second. I really don't. We're going to talk to what I think tomorrow, and I'm going to say, I'm going to sit here in silence as you tell me facts about William McKinley, and I bet you that'll be the shortest conversation ever aired on television. We'll see. Professor, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Tucker.